She slept with the Hells Angel and ran. Next day, 500 bikers circled around her house. A quiet, small-town woman thought she'd buried her past forever until the thunder of motorcycles shook her doorstep. 500 men in leather, engines rumbling like Judgment Day. And at the center of it all, one message from the man she swore she'd never see again. He's gone, but his last words were your name. She thought they came for revenge. Instead, they came with a secret that could shatter everything, a dying man's final wish, and a town that's about to turn against her. Whispers spread, doors close, and the woman who spent years hiding must now stand beside the very people everyone fears. Because sometimes, the past doesn't come back to punish you. It comes back to redeem you. But when hate burns hotter than forgiveness, can grace survive the fire? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The morning began like any other in Maple Hollow. The small Tennessee town still slept under a thin veil of fog, the kind that clung to the hollows and made the hills look like soft gray pillows. Lucy Monroe stood on her front porch, mug of coffee in hand, staring out across her quiet yard. The sun had barely risen, and the air smelled of wet leaves and wood smoke. Inside, her son Caleb was still getting dressed for school, humming a tune from church under his breath. Life in Maple Hollow was slow, steady, and predictable, exactly how Lucy liked it. She had worked hard to make it that way. Her little farmhouse, though old and creaky, was a safe haven. Her days were simple. Work at the nursing home, pick up groceries, help Caleb with homework, and tuck him into bed by 8. There were no surprises, no drama, no shadows from the past creeping in. Not anymore. Then she heard it. At first, it was just a faint rumble, low, distant, and strange enough to make the birds scatter from the trees. She frowned, stepping off the porch, coffee forgotten on the railing. The rumble grew louder, deeper, until the ground itself began to tremble. Caleb's voice called from inside, "Mama, what's that noise?" I don't know, baby," Lucy said softly, though her heart already knew. The sound was too familiar, too haunting. It was the sound she'd once fallen asleep to, back when her life was wild and dangerous, when the man she loved rode with a patch on his back and a devil in his smile. Engines. Hundreds of them. Lucy froze as the noise rolled through the valley, echoing off the trees. She could see dust rising on the dirt road a half-mile away. Then, like a scene from a dream, motorcycles appeared one by one, forming a line so long it stretched beyond sight. Their headlights flickered through the morning mist. Her stomach twisted. No, she thought. It can't be. Caleb ran to her side, eyes wide. "Mama, look! There's so many of them!" "Inside, Caleb," Lucy said, grabbing his shoulders. Her voice was tight, almost shaking. "Go inside right now and lock the door." "But now?" He hesitated, seeing the fear in her face. Then he ran. Lucy stayed rooted on the porch, breath shallow, heart pounding. The motorcycles turned onto her road. They came slow, deliberate, like a tide rolling in. The roar filled her ears, drowning out every other sound until it was all she could hear. She backed up a step. The riders wore leather vests, patches with wings and skulls and flames. Their faces were lined and serious, some hidden behind sunglasses and beards. They weren't boys. They were men, older now, worn down by miles and mistakes. But still, bikers. And there were hundreds of them. The first one stopped right in front of her fence, then another and another, until the entire road and yard were filled. The engines quieted one by one until only the wind was left. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise had been. Lucy's knees felt weak. She gripped the porch rail. Then one man stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, gray in his beard, but not old. His leather vest bore a faded patch. The Brotherhood Riders for Christ. His eyes were calm, but carried the kind of sadness that comes from years of fighting battles most people never saw. He removed his helmet and nodded once, respectful. "Ma'am," he said, voice deep but kind. "Name's Doc Evans." Lucy swallowed hard. "What do you want?" she asked, though she already feared the answer. The man looked at the ground for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, yellowed and creased at the corners. "We're here because of someone you once knew," he said softly. "Damon Hayes." Her breath caught in her throat. Damon. She hadn't heard that name out loud in 8 years, not since the night she ran, not since the night she packed a bag, took her unborn son, and left the man she loved sleeping on a motel bed surrounded by beer bottles and promises. Her voice came out as a whisper. He's not with you?" Doc's eyes softened. "No, ma'am. He's gone. Died 2 weeks ago." Lucy felt her world tilt. Her hand went to her mouth, trembling. "Gone?" Doc nodded. "He died saving a little girl from a burning school bus. Didn't make it out himself." Tears welled in her eyes. The world blurred. The other riders stood silent, helmets in hand, heads bowed. There was no noise, no movement, only respect. Lucy's heart twisted between grief and disbelief. She had imagined Damon in 100 ways, angry, bitter, alive somewhere out west. But never this. Doc held out the envelope. "Before he passed, he gave me this. Said it was for you." Lucy hesitated. Her fingers hovered before she finally took it. The paper was warm from his pocket, edges worn as if it had been opened and closed 100 times. She turned it over. Her name was written in Damon's familiar scrawl, rough, bold, unmistakable. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single page. "Lucy, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't be sad. You saved me. The day you left, I saw what I had become. I started fighting for something better. I never stopped thinking about you or our boy. I hope he's got your heart, not mine. Tell him his daddy was trying to make things right. Tell him I finally found peace." Damon Lucy pressed the letter to her chest, tears spilling down her face. She couldn't speak. The porch boards creaked as Doc stepped closer. "I rode with him these last few years," Doc said gently. "He was a good man at the end. Helped more people than I can count. We called him Rogue still, but he used to joke that he'd traded his road for redemption." Lucy managed a small, broken laugh through her tears. "That sounds like him?" Doc nodded. "He told me you ran because you had to. Said losing you was what made him look up instead of down." The engines behind him rumbled once, a low, respectful thunder. Lucy looked up at the sea of riders, men of all ages, rough on the outside but silent now, watching her with empathy. "I don't understand," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Why come here?" Doc reached into his vest again and pulled out a folded sketch. This was his last wish. He handed it to her. On the paper was a hand-drawn playground, slides, swings, a little park surrounded by trees. At the bottom, Damon had written, "For kids who need a safe place to play, build it where she lives." Lucy's lip trembled. "Here? In Maple Hollow?" Doc nodded. "He wanted it in your town. Said that's where his heart was. We came to make that happen." For a long time, Lucy couldn't speak. The morning sun was climbing now, turning the mist gold. Caleb peeked out from behind the curtain, eyes wide but curious. The sight of him steadied her. She looked at Doc again. You came all this way to build a playground?" "Yes, ma'am. Damon left some money for it. Not much, but enough to start. The rest we'll raise." Lucy shook her head slowly, still in disbelief. "The people here, they won't understand. They'll be scared." Doc's gaze didn't waver. "Then we'll show them what redemption looks like." He placed his helmet under his arm and stepped back. "We'll be at the diner in town if you want to talk. No pressure, just wanted to deliver his words." He turned to leave, signaling to the others. Engines came alive again, one after another, filling the air with sound that vibrated through Lucy's bones. Caleb rushed out onto the porch as the bikers began to ride away. "Mama, who were they?" Lucy knelt beside him, wiping her tears quickly. "Just some people your daddy used to know." Caleb frowned. "Daddy?" She nodded, voice trembling. "Yeah, baby, Daddy." The convoy disappeared down the road, leaving behind only dust, tire marks, and the faint smell of oil and rain. The silence that followed was deafening. Lucy looked down at the letter still clutched in her hands. Her thumb brushed over Damon's name again and again. For years, she'd tried to erase him. Now his memory stood louder than ever, 500 engines strong. The sun broke through the clouds, warm against her face. She looked toward the road, where the last biker had vanished around the bend. Her heart was heavy, but somewhere deep inside, a small spark of something new began to flicker. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story with Damon. Maybe it was the beginning of something he'd been trying to leave behind for her all along. Lucy turned toward the house, letter pressed to her heart, whispering softly, "You really did change, didn't you?" The only answer was the wind rustling through the trees, gentle, almost like a promise. The house felt too still after the bikers left. Dust hung in the light that spilled through the kitchen window. Lucy stood at the counter with the envelope in her hand. She had already read the letter once, but she read it again. Her eyes moved over Damon's handwriting, steady this time, like he had tried to make each word count. Caleb sat at the table, chin in his hands. "Mama, were those men bad?" She folded the letter, careful with every edge. "Some of them used to be," she said. "But people can change." He watched her face. "Did you know all of them?" "No," she said softly. "Just one. Your daddy." Caleb's mouth fell open. "My daddy?" Lucy knew this moment had been waiting for years. She had put it off, always thinking she would tell him later, when he was older, when she felt braver. Now later had come without asking. She pulled out a chair and sat beside him. "His name was Damon Hayes," she said. "He was a biker a long time ago. We loved each other, but things got hard. I left because I had to keep you safe." Caleb's eyes shone. "Is he gone?" She took his small hand. "Yes, 2 weeks ago. He died saving a little girl. That's a brave way to go, honey." Caleb blinked back tears. "Did he know me?" "He knew you in his heart," she said. "He thought about you every day. He wrote this for us." She held up the letter. Caleb looked at it like it was a treasure map. Then he leaned into her. She wrapped her arms around him and felt his heartbeat against hers. They stayed like that for a long time, until the clock ticked past 8 and the world outside woke up for real. At 9, Lucy called in to work. She told her supervisor her stomach hurt. It was not a lie. The stress tied knots all through her middle. She washed the breakfast dishes. She wiped the counter even when it was clean. She checked the window again and again, as if the road would bring another wave of bikes. It did not. Around noon, the phone buzzed. It was a local number she didn't recognize. She let it ring. Then it rang again. Finally, she answered. "Ms. Monroe?" a slow voice asked. "This is Dale Rucker, County Sheriff. Heard there was a big biker group out near your house this morning. Wanted to make sure you're all right." "I'm fine," she said. "You know any of those fellas?" She paused. "One, not anymore." He cleared his throat. "Well, if they come back and make trouble, you call me. We don't want any of that in Maple Hollow." "I understand," she said. "Thank you, Sheriff." She hung up and slid the phone into her pocket. A thin worry ran under her skin like cold water. People would start to talk. They already had. Maple Hollow was small. News spread faster than rain on tin. By 1 o'clock, she felt the walls closing in. She told Caleb to grab his blue backpack. "We're going to see Mrs. Carver," she said. "Just for a little while." They walked down the gravel lane to the small house next door. The porch steps squeaked, and a wind chime sang a thin song. Mrs. Carver, a sharp-eyed woman in her 70s, opened the door before they knocked. "I was just about to call you," she said, peering over her glasses. "I saw all those bikes. Lord have mercy. It looked like a parade for the devil. You all right, honey?" "We're okay," Lucy said. "Could Caleb stay with you for a few hours? I need to take care of something." Mrs. Carver's eyes softened when she looked down at the boy. "Of course, sugar. I always have cookies." She knelt. "Caleb, you can help me pick tomatoes. I can't bend like I used to. You got better knees than me?" Caleb smiled despite himself. He looked up at his mother, and Lucy nodded. "I'll be right next door," she said. "Listen to Mrs. Carver. I'll come get you before supper." As she walked back to the house alone, the air felt heavier. Leaves skittered across the road. A dog barked somewhere far off. She changed into a plain sweater, tied her hair back, and took Damon's letter and the sketch. Then she slid her keys into her pocket and drove toward town. The diner sat on the main street, just past the feed store and the church. The sign out front flickered, "Evelyn's Eats," and a row of motorcycles stood like black horses along the curb. People on the sidewalk slowed to stare. Some nodded at Lucy, some did not. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee and fried onions. The bikers had taken up the corner booths, but they sat quiet, hats off, voices low. A few had gray in their hair. One had a child's bracelet tied to his wrist. A waitress moved among them, and they thanked her, every single one. Doc Evans stood when he saw Lucy. He gave a small smile and a respectful nod. "Ma'am, can we talk?" she asked. "Of course." He motioned to a table away from the others. He sat with his hands folded, as if he had all the time in the world, and none of it was his. His vest lay open. On the left side, over his heart, a small cross patch was sewn above a stitched name. Dossie. Lucy set the letter and sketch on the table. "This is real," she said. "He really wrote this?" Doc didn't reach for the paper. "Yes, ma'am. He wrote it the night after the fire." "Fire?" Doc's jaw tightened. "The school bus. He was headed home from a meeting we had with a church in the next county. The bus had pulled off the road, smoke coming from the engine. People were screaming. He ran toward it when others ran back, pulled one child out, went back in for another. The second one got stuck. He pushed her through the window to her teacher. Then the roof came down." Doc swallowed. He didn't make it out. The clatter of dishes and hum of voices blurred as Lucy pictured it. A yellow bus, black smoke, panic and heat. Damon's hands, strong and sure even at the end. Tears burned in her eyes. "He changed," Doc said quietly. "He really did. 5 years clean. He went to meetings. He helped other men walk that same road. He did more good in 5 years than some do in 50. Lucy nodded, thumb rubbing the paper edge until it turned soft. "I'm glad," she said. "I'm so glad." Doc waited, letting her sit with the words. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. "We don't want to cause trouble for you. We came to give you the letter, and to tell you we want to build that park. We'll leave town tonight if you want, and plan things from a distance. But we came in person because we wanted folks to see our faces. People fear what they don't know. Damon taught us that." Lucy looked toward the window. Outside, a man she knew from the hardware store pointed at the bikes, shaking his head. She heard Pastor Whitmore's voice in her memory. Men like that bring nothing but trouble. She remembered, too, the way the riders had stood quiet at her fence, hats in their hands, the oil smell mingled with candle wax and morning mist. "What would you need?" she asked at last. Doc blinked, like he had not let himself hope too soon. "We'll need a permit from the town, a piece of land, volunteers, some cash for lumber and hardware. We can raise most of it. We can work with the church if they'll have us." "The church?" She said the words like a test. "Pastor won't like it." Doc's mouth twitched. "He doesn't have to. He only has to love his neighbor." A small, surprised laugh left her. It felt like a window opening in a closed room. The waitress came by with coffee. Doc reached for the check. The waitress put a hand on his wrist. "Already paid," she said. "Somebody called it in." Doc turned his head, eyes startled. "Who?" The waitress shrugged. "Didn't say, just said, for the men trying to do good." He looked back at Lucy. "You see? Hearts can turn." She looked down at the sketch again. The swings, the slide, the small note Damon had scrawled in the corner. "Make sure it's safe." She loves safe. She pressed her lips together and nodded. "Okay," she said. "I'll help you. I'll go to the town office with you tomorrow. We'll start this right." Doc released a breath she didn't know he had been holding. "Thank you, ma'am." "And one more thing," she said. "I want to do this with dignity. No fighting. No yelling in the streets. If people insult you, you walk away. If they slam doors, you bless them." He nodded. "That's the only way we work now." They talked for another half hour. Doc told her about the Brotherhood Riders for Christ, how some of them were veterans, how some had lost everything and found grace when they thought they were beyond saving, how they rode to towns that needed roofs patched, food delivered, wheelchairs repaired, how they prayed before they touched a tool. Lucy listened. The stories were simple and heavy and full of strange light. When she stood to leave, Doc stood too. "We'll stay out on the county line," he said, "at a campsite near the river. We won't crowd the town. Tonight, if it's all right, a few of us would like to bring something to your fence." Her brow knit. "To my fence?" "Just a tribute," he said. "Nothing loud, just candles for Rogue." He paused. "For Damon." Lucy's throat tightened. "Yes," she said. "That's all right." She drove home with the window cracked and the autumn air cool on her face. As she turned down her lane, she saw Mrs. Carver and Caleb bent over the garden bed, their hands stained with soil. She parked and crossed the grass. "How'd it go?" Mrs. Carver asked, standing slowly. "They want to build a playground," Lucy said. The words felt almost unreal and yet solid in her mouth. Mrs. Carver raised a gray brow. "Well, I'll be. Bikers who build swings. World's got jokes." "They're different now," Lucy said, and she heard the hope in her own voice. "At least these ones are." Mrs. Carver's gaze softened. "I've lived long enough to know people don't stay the same forever. Good thing, too." She dusted off her hands. "Now, your boy ate 3 cookies. He's about to bounce out of his shoes." Caleb grinned, teeth chocolate smudged. "Mama, I picked the biggest tomato." "I see that," Lucy said, kneeling to admire the red fruit in his palms. "We'll slice it for supper." Afternoon slid toward evening. Lucy thanked Mrs. Carver and walked home with Caleb. the letter safe in her pocket. They washed the tomatoes. They browned chicken in a skillet, the house filled with the warm smell of garlic and rice. She told Caleb a little more about his dad. Not everything. Not the dark parts, just enough to make the picture honest and kind. He was brave, she said. He did a very brave thing. Like a hero? Caleb asked. Lucy thought of smoke and heat and a little girl lifted through a window. Yes, she said. Like a hero. They ate at the small table. When they finished, they washed the plates and left them to dry. The sun slid lower. The sky turned pink and then soft purple. A cricket began its nightly song. A faint rumble rose on the road. Not loud, not like the morning, just a handful of bikes. Lucy lifted her eyes and breathed in once, steadying herself. "Mama?" Caleb asked. "It's okay," she said. "Let's step on the porch." They went out together. Down at the fence line, 6 riders had parked their motorcycles. They stood quiet, hats in their hands. Doc lifted a hand in greeting but did not step closer. "Evening?" he called softly. "Evening," Lucy said. The men set small glass jars along the fence. In each jar was a white candle. One by one they struck matches and lit them. The flames flickered in the gentle wind. The riders bowed their heads. No one spoke for a long time. No one needed to. Caleb squeezed Lucy's hand. "It's pretty," he whispered. "It is," she said. Doc finally looked up. He spoke toward the candles, not toward her. "Rogue, we saw you. We knew you. You were a hard man once, and then you turned soft in the right ways. You were our brother. You were a sinner saved by grace. You loved a girl who taught you what safe meant. Now we keep your word." The men murmured, "Amen." Doc turned to Lucy. "We'll be at the campsite tonight," he said. "We'll keep the town quiet. We'll meet you at the county building at 9 in the morning if you still want to go." "I'll be there," she said. He nodded, put on his helmet, and the others did the same. They kicked their bikes to life, engines pulsing like distant thunder, then rolled away slow, respectful, like a procession leaving a stream without muddying the banks. Night deepened. The candles burned white along the fence, their flames steady, small, and hard to put out. Lucy and Caleb sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket. The crickets sang. A breeze moved the leaves. "Can we leave them there?" Caleb asked. "For a while," she said. "Until the wax is gone." "What was Daddy like when you met him?" She smiled at a memory she had not touched in years. A roadside bar, a jukebox with one working button, brown eyes that laughed before his mouth did. "He was loud," she said. "He tried to act tough, but he had a way of looking at the world like it still surprised him." Caleb nodded, as if he could picture it. "I wish I could have met him." Lucy pulled him close. "Me too," she whispered. They sat until the air grew cool and the stars crowded the sky. At last, she carried Caleb inside and tucked him into bed. She kissed his forehead. "You are loved," she said. "Always." He smiled in his sleep. Back in the kitchen, she set the letter on the table and smoothed it flat. She turned on the small lamp. Its golden pool of light warmed the page. She read the words a third time, then a fourth. Each time, they felt like a hand reaching from the past to hold her steady for the next step. On the counter lay the sketch of the playground. She traced the swings with a fingertip. She pictured it built, bright and safe. She pictured children running, laughing, climbing, sliding. She pictured a little brass plaque at the gate with a name, Rogue's Hope Park, and under it a line she had not found yet but would. Something about second chances. Something about how love did not erase the past but made a better way through it. The phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She opened it. "This is Doc. Sorry to bother you. Just wanted you to know the men are settled by the river. We'll see you in the morning. Thank you for letting us light the candles." Lucy typed back, "Thank you for bringing the letter. See you at 9. She put the phone down and turned off the lamp. Outside, the candles still glowed, points of light in the dark. She stepped onto the porch for one last look. The air smelled like wax and leaves and the faraway smoke of someone's fire. She wrapped her arms around herself and lifted her face to the night. "Okay," she whispered, as if to Damon, as if to God, as if to the scared girl she once was who ran with a baby in her belly and a prayer in her mouth. "We'll build it. We'll do it right." She went back inside, locked the door, and climbed the stairs. In her room, she lay down and listened to the quiet and the steady breath of her sleeping boy down the hall. Her chest ached, but it was a sweet ache, like the pull of a new stitch closing a wound. Before sleep came, she saw it all again. The morning roar, the letter in her hands, the kindness in Doc's eyes, the ribbon of candles along the fence like a runway for angels. The past had found her, but it had not come to crush her. It had come to tell her there was more to do, and she was not alone in doing it. The last thing she thought before she drifted off was simple and sure. Tomorrow she would stand in front of the town and ask for a place where children could play without fear. And if people said no, she would ask again. And again. Because this was not only Damon's last wish, it was hers too. Morning sunlight streamed across the kitchen table as Lucy packed Caleb's lunch. She sliced an apple into neat wedges, slipped in a cookie, and tucked the lunchbox closed. Her heart still felt heavy from the night before, but there was something new beneath the weight. Determination. Caleb swung his backpack over his shoulder. "You're going to talk to the mayor today, right, Mama?" She smiled at him. "Something like that?" He grinned. "Tell him the park should have a swing that goes real high." "I'll remember that." She kissed his forehead and watched him run down the lane toward the school bus, waving once before he disappeared behind the dust of the gravel road. The quiet came rushing back. Lucy poured herself a cup of coffee, though her stomach churned too much to drink it. The thought of facing Maple, Hollow's town office, made her palms sweat. Still, she had made a promise. To Damon, to Doc, to herself. By 8:30, she was walking toward her old pickup truck. The air smelled of dew and autumn leaves. When she turned onto the main road, the town square came into view. It was the same as always: brick storefronts, a white church steeple, and the flagpole standing proud in the middle. Yet something in her chest told her this morning would change things. Doc and 2 other bikers were already waiting outside the county building. They stood beside their parked motorcycles, helmets under their arms. They looked oddly calm against the tidy backdrop of the courthouse lawn. Doc waved when he saw her. "Morning, ma'am," he said as she stepped out of her truck. "Morning, Doc." He nodded toward the glass doors. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be." They entered the narrow lobby together. The smell of old paper and floor polish filled the air. Behind a wooden counter, a thin woman with gray curls looked up from her clipboard. Her name tag read, Rhonda. "Morning," Rhonda said, eyeing the leather vests. "What can I do for y'all?" Lucy took a deep breath. "We'd like to request a permit to build a children's playground on the south lot by the church." Rhonda blinked. "Playground?" Her gaze flicked toward Doc's vest and back. "You mean, like, a public playground?" "Yes, ma'am," Doc said politely. "All volunteer work. Materials paid for through donations." Rhonda pursed her lips, reaching for a form. You'll need to speak with the mayor before I can stamp anything. He's in his office, but he's got meetings this morning. Lucy straightened her shoulders. We can wait. They sat on the bench beneath the courthouse windows. The light poured over the tiled floor. People passed through the doors, some offering polite nods, others whispering. A pair of men in suits glanced curiously at the bikers, then moved on quickly. Small towns, Doc said under his breath, smiling faintly. They watch first, understand later. Lucy chuckled softly. That's about right. After half an hour, Rhonda waved them forward. Mayor's ready for you. They entered a small office lined with maps of the county and a framed photo of the 4th of July parade. The mayor, Mr. Darrell Haynes, was a round man in his 50s with kind but cautious eyes. He motioned for them to sit. I hear you want to build a playground, he said, folding his hands. Mind telling me more? Doc explained how Damon Hayes, a member of their group, had died saving a child. How he'd left behind a wish to build a park in Lucy's town. How the Brotherhood Riders wanted to honor that wish by volunteering time and resources to make it happen. The mayor listened, nodding slowly. I remember hearing about that bus fire on the news, he said. That was your man? Lucy's voice trembled, but stayed steady. Yes, sir. He changed a lot before he passed. This is what he wanted, to do something good. The mayor leaned back in his chair, studying them both. Well, I can't say I've ever had a request quite like this. We've got an old parcel by the church that's been empty for years. It'd be a fine place for a park. But I'll need to take this to the council. People here are cautious about outsiders. Doc nodded. We understand. We'll earn their trust. The mayor smiled faintly. You'll get your chance. Council meets Wednesday night. I'll put you on the agenda. Lucy exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Thank you, sir. Truly. When they left the courthouse, the sun was high, bright and golden. The town square bustled now, farm trucks rolling by, a group of teenagers laughing near the fountain. Lucy felt something inside her unclench. You did good, Doc said, holding the door open for her. So did you. He smiled. That's teamwork. They crossed the street toward the diner. On the way, Lucy noticed a few faces watching them. Curious, suspicious, maybe even disapproving. She held her chin high anyway. Inside, the waitress from yesterday waved them over. Coffee's hot, she said. You all want breakfast? Doc nodded. Please, ma'am. They ordered eggs and biscuits. The smell of butter and coffee grounded Lucy. As they waited, Doc pulled a small leather notebook from his vest. We'll need local help, he said. We can't build this alone. I can ask around, Lucy said. Mrs. Carver knows everyone. Maybe the church youth group. Doc smiled. That's a start. He looked out the window toward the courthouse steps. You think they'll let us stay in town while we build? I think, Lucy said, if they see you working hard and being kind, they'll stop worrying. He chuckled. We'll keep it clean. No loud engines, no cursing, no beer cans, just hammers and prayer. Their food arrived, and they ate in quiet for a while. Lucy's appetite came back little by little. Each bite felt like courage growing. When she stood to leave, Doc said, You know, he talked about you all the time. Lucy paused. Damon? Doc nodded. He said you were the first person who ever looked at him and didn't see the patch. Said you saw the man underneath. Her throat tightened. He wasn't always easy to see. Doc smiled gently. None of us are. Outside, the air was crisp and smelled faintly of fried bacon from the diner vent. Lucy's truck sat under a maple tree, red leaves scattered across its hood. As she reached for the door, Doc said, We'll bring some of the men tomorrow. We can start clearing the lot just to show good faith." "I'll be there," she said. He tipped his head. "Appreciate you, ma'am." The drive home felt lighter. She turned on the radio, an old country gospel tune humming about mercy and new beginnings. She sang softly under her breath. When she pulled into her driveway, she saw Mrs. Carver out front watering her flowers. The older woman waved. "Well?" Mrs. Carver called. "Did they give you the land or send you packing?" "Neither yet," Lucy said with a smile. "We have to meet with the town council Wednesday." Mrs. Carver said, lowering the watering can. "That'll be the real test. Don't let them scare you." "I won't." Caleb ran up the drive from the bus stop, waving a folded paper. "Mama, I drew the playground!" Lucy laughed and knelt to take it. The drawing showed slides and swings, with stick figures smiling under a big sun. At the top, he had written, "Rogues Park." Her chest swelled. "It's perfect," she said. They ate dinner early that night. Simple soup and cornbread. After Caleb was asleep, Lucy sat on the porch again. The candles at the fence had burned down, leaving only wax puddles in the jars. But the memory of their light stayed with her. She thought about Damon, his handwriting, his promise, the way he must have felt when he wrote, "Tell her she saved me." Maybe she had saved him, but now it felt like he was saving her. The moon rose over the trees, bright and full. In the quiet, she whispered, "We'll build it, Damon. You'll see." Inside, her phone buzzed with a new message from Doc. "Council meeting confirmed for Wednesday night, 6 p.m. We'll be there. You're not alone." Lucy smiled, typed back "thank you," and set the phone aside. She looked once more toward the empty lot down the road, the one by the church, where Damon's dream would soon rise from the earth. It wasn't just a playground anymore. It was hope, shaped in wood and sweat and forgiveness. And for the first time in years, Lucy Monroe felt brave enough to believe that redemption might truly belong to everyone. Wednesday came too soon. By afternoon, the sky had turned the color of steel, heavy with the promise of rain. Lucy stood at her kitchen counter, her hands flat against the cool wood, trying to calm her nerves. The letter from Damon lay beside her cup of tea, now cold. Every time she looked at his handwriting, she drew strength from it. But tonight would be harder than any day before. Caleb watched her from the table, kicking his feet against the chair. "Are you scared, Mama?" Lucy smiled, though her lips trembled. "A little, honey. But sometimes being brave means doing something even when you're scared." He nodded solemnly, like a small man trying to understand the weight of her words. "Will the men from the bikes be there?" "They will," she said, "and some people won't like that. But we're all going to be polite and kind no matter what happens." Mrs. Carver knocked at the door just then, stepping in without waiting to be invited. She wore her good sweater and carried a basket of muffins. "Evening, child," she said. "You look pale. Eat one of these before you faint." Lucy laughed softly and took one. "You're coming to the meeting?" "You bet I am," Mrs. Carver said, crossing her arms. "Somebody's got to speak sense if that council starts acting foolish." When the clock struck 5:30, Lucy kissed Caleb goodbye and promised to be home before bedtime. Mrs. Carver stayed behind to keep him company. "We'll bake cookies while you're gone," she said with a wink. Lucy drove through town as dusk settled. The courthouse glowed under yellow lights, its white pillars bright against the deepening sky. A few motorcycles were already parked out front, neat and quiet. Doc stood by the steps, talking with a few locals who watched him cautiously. When he saw Lucy's truck pull up, he lifted a hand. "You made it," he said as she stepped out. "Wouldn't miss it. Inside, the town hall buzzed with murmurs. Folding chairs lined the room, filled with townspeople clutching coats and purses. The council sat at a long table up front. 5 members, including the mayor. Pastor Whitmore sat near the front, his Bible on his knee, eyes wary but curious. When the meeting began, the mayor cleared his throat. "Next on the agenda," he said, "we have a proposal for a new community playground project, led by Ms. Lucy Monroe and representatives of the Brotherhood Riders for Christ." A ripple of whispers spread across the room. Lucy's heart pounded as she rose. Doc gave her a small nod, his calm presence steady beside her. She stepped forward to the podium, her palms damp. "Good evening," she began, her voice wavering before she steadied it. "Most of you know me. I've lived here 8 years. I work at the nursing home, and my boy goes to Maple Hollow Elementary. I'm here because I believe our town needs a place where our children can play safely, a place built not on fear, but on hope." Someone in the crowd muttered, "Hope and Harley engines don't mix." A few people chuckled. Lucy's cheeks flushed, but she didn't falter. "The men who've offered to help build this playground aren't what you think," she continued. "Yes, they ride motorcycles, but they're fathers, veterans, men who turned their lives around and now serve others. One of them was Damon Hayes." The name drew a new round of whispers. The mayor leaned forward, listening closely. "He was my son's father," Lucy said, her voice soft but strong. "He made mistakes, so did I. But he changed. He died saving a little girl from a burning bus. His last wish was to build a playground here, where families like ours could gather. The men behind this project are here to make that happen." Doc stepped up beside her then, his large hands clasped in front of him. "Evening, folks," he said, his deep voice carrying through the room. "Name's Doc Evans. We're not here to cause trouble or change your town. We're here to honor a good man's wish and show what grace can do. We don't want money or credit, just permission to build." He paused, looking over the crowd. "We'll respect your laws, your peace, and your people. But I can tell you this. Every nail we hammer will be for the children who deserve to see what love looks like in wood and sweat." Silence followed, thick and uncertain. Then a man in the second row, a mechanic named Paul Dobbs, stood up. "And what happens when you're done?" he asked. "You'll just ride off again and leave us to clean up?" Doc shook his head. "No, sir. We'll leave behind something that lasts. A place that reminds folks not to judge a man by what's on his back, but by what he builds." Mrs. Carver stood suddenly in the back row, her voice sharp and sure. "I've lived here 73 years, she said. "Those men fixed my porch last week when nobody else offered. They prayed before they picked up a hammer. If that's not what this town needs more of, I don't know what is." The crowd turned to look at her. The old woman crossed her arms and glared at anyone who dared roll their eyes. Pastor Whitmore rose next, his brow furrowed, but his voice was measured. "We all believe in second chances," he said. "But trust is earned. If we allow this project, we'll be watching, closely." Doc nodded. "That's fair, Pastor." The mayor finally raised a hand for quiet. "I've heard enough," he said. "This town needs something positive. The lot by the church has sat empty too long. I say we give them the chance to prove themselves." He looked down the row of council members. One by one, they nodded. "All in favor?" he asked. 4 voices said, "Aye." "All opposed?" Only one, "Nay." Lucy let out a shaky breath as the gavel struck. "Motion passes." A cheer went up from the back. Mrs. Carver again, clapping her hands until others joined in. The bikers who had waited quietly along the wall smiled, nodding to one another. Lucy turned to Doc, eyes bright with tears. "You did it," he said. "We did," she whispered. When the meeting ended, The townsfolk filed out in small clusters. Some offered polite smiles. Others still looked unsure. But the air felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Outside, rain had begun to fall, light and silvery. The motorcycles gleamed under the street lamps, drops gliding down the chrome. Lucy pulled her jacket tighter. "Tomorrow morning," Doc said, "we'll start clearing the lot. You sure you're ready for the noise?" She laughed softly. "After today, I think I can handle a few engines." Mrs. Carver came bustling out behind them, umbrella crooked over her shoulder. "Well, glory be," she said. "Maple Hollow might finally learn what grace looks like." Doc grinned. "With your permission, ma'am, we'll start at 8. "You can start at sunrise if you want," Mrs. Carver said. "I'll bring biscuits." Lucy smiled as rain misted her hair. "I'll bring the coffee." Doc's eyes met hers, gentle and warm. Then it settled. They said their goodbyes, and Lucy watched the bikers mount their motorcycles. As they rode off into the wet night, their engines hummed low, steady, and strangely peaceful. When Lucy reached home, the kitchen smelled of cookies and cinnamon. Caleb met her at the door, his face hopeful. "Did they say yes?" "They said yes," she whispered, lifting him into her arms. "We're building Daddy's park." He hugged her tight, laughter bubbling up. "He'd be proud, Mama." "I think so too," she said, blinking away tears. Later that night, after Caleb had gone to bed, Lucy stood by the window watching the rain streak down the glass. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she could still hear the faint hum of engines fading into the hills. For the first time in years, she didn't hear them as a threat. She heard them as a promise. Tomorrow the work would begin. And with it, something inside her would begin again, too. Morning sunlight poured over Maple Hollow like a blessing. The air smelled of damp earth and new beginnings. Lucy parked her truck beside the empty church lot, heart fluttering as she saw the bikers already at work. Doc stood near a pile of lumber, sleeves rolled up, barking gentle orders that somehow made everyone laugh. Around him, a dozen men unloaded boards, shovels, and bright orange cones. The once-forgotten land had come alive with motion and purpose. Lucy stepped out, coffee thermos in hand. "Morning," she called. Doc turned and grinned. "Morning, ma'am. You're right on time." She handed him a steaming cup. "Fuel for the foreman." He chuckled. "You just made yourself part of the crew." Mrs. Carver soon arrived with her basket of biscuits, followed by a few curious townsfolk who couldn't resist watching. The rumble of engines had drawn them, but what they saw was not what they expected. The men worked quietly, laughing, praying before they lifted a beam, and waving to the kids who peeked from the church steps. Pastor Whitmore himself came out to stand near Lucy, his hands tucked in his coat pockets. "I didn't think they'd really show up," he admitted. "They did," Lucy said softly, "and they're here to build, not destroy." The pastor nodded, still cautious, but his eyes softened as one of the bikers paused to fix a child's fallen shoelace. "Maybe the Lord's got stranger workers than I thought," he murmured. By mid-morning, the men had marked the foundation of the playground. Stakes lined the edges where swings and slides would soon stand. Doc called for a break, wiping sweat from his brow. "We'll keep at it till noon," he said. "No rush. This ain't about speed. It's about doing it right." Lucy walked the perimeter of the lot, imagining it filled with children's laughter. Caleb would love it. The colors, the joy, the freedom. She smiled, picturing him running across the grass that now held only dirt and promise. Then a familiar voice broke her daydream. "Didn't expect to see you playing helper to outlaws, Lucy." She turned. Sheriff Rucker leaned against his patrol car, arms crossed. His tone wasn't cruel, just wary. "They're not outlaws. Lucy said calmly. "They're rebuilding." He glanced at the bikers, unimpressed. "Folks around here scare easy. Keep it peaceful, all right? I don't want trouble." "You won't get any," Doc said, stepping forward, his voice respectful but firm. "We came to honor a man, not stir up mess. You have my word." The sheriff studied him for a long moment, then tipped his hat and left. When he was gone, Lucy let out a shaky breath. "He means well," she said. "I know," Doc replied. "Trust takes time." The rest of the morning passed in steady rhythm. Laughter, hammering, and the scrape of shovels filled the air. Even a few skeptical townspeople began lending a hand. Children chased each other at the edges, their giggles carrying on the wind. At noon, Mrs. Carver passed out biscuits, and everyone gathered in a loose circle. Doc bowed his head and prayed aloud. "Lord, let this ground we stand on become a place of peace. Let every child who plays here feel safe, and let every person who doubted see that Grace can wear leather and ride a Harley. Amen." "Amen," echoed through the crowd. Soft at first, then stronger. Lucy looked around at the faces. Tired, smiling, open. A lump rose in her throat. For the first time, the town wasn't divided between us and them. It was just people, broken, forgiven, and building something good together. As she walked back to her truck later that day, the air humming with hope, she thought of Damon again. His letter, his sacrifice, his final wish. And she whispered, "We're doing it, Rogue. We're really doing it." The wind caught her words and carried them over the lot, where hammers struck, saws hummed, and redemption rose, one board at a time. By the end of the week, the old church lot had transformed. Wooden posts stood firm in the ground, and the laughter of children who came to watch the progress had become part of the daily soundtrack. Lucy spent every afternoon bringing water and sandwiches, learning names and stories as she worked alongside the bikers. The town's fear had begun to fade. Just a little. Some locals even stopped by to drop off cookies or tools. But one afternoon, as Lucy packed up supplies in her kitchen, she noticed something odd at the bottom of Damon's letter envelope. The corner was thicker, like there was something hidden beneath the lining. Curious, she ran her finger along the edge and pulled free a smaller folded paper. Inside was a check, yellowed but still crisp, written in Damon's name to the Maple Hollow Recovery Center for $25,000. Her breath caught. The rehab center. That was where her brother Eli had gone last year. She sat down, hard, her knees weak. He'd told her someone anonymous had covered his costs. Now she knew who. She grabbed her keys and drove toward the next town, heart pounding. The recovery center sat at the edge of a wide pasture, its white sign chipped but welcoming. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and hope. The director, a soft-spoken man with a kind smile, greeted her. "Lucy Monroe," he said, recognizing her. "Your brother's doing well. He's been helping with the new residents." She blinked. "He's here?" "In the garden," the man said, pointing toward the back. Lucy walked outside and saw Eli kneeling in the dirt, pulling weeds from a row of tomatoes. His shoulders were broader now, his face lean but alive. When he saw her, his eyes widened, and for a second they both froze. "Lucy," he said, standing slowly. She nodded, tears already spilling. "You look good, Eli." He wiped his hands on his jeans. "Better than before, huh?" She laughed softly through her tears. "A lot better." They sat on a bench beneath an old oak tree. The wind rustled the leaves like a whisper from above. She told him about Damon, about the bikers, the park, and the letter. When she showed him the check, Eli's eyes filled with tears. "He did this?" Eli asked. "He paid for me?" Lucy nodded. "He never told me. I didn't even know until today." Eli stared at the ground, jaw tight. "I used to hate him," he admitted. "Blamed him for you running off, for the mess our family became. But if it weren't for him—" He looked up, voice breaking. "I wouldn't be alive right now." Lucy reached out and took his hand. "He wanted you to have another chance. We all do." They sat in silence, the kind that didn't need words. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime sang a few soft notes. When Lucy finally stood to leave, Eli said, "Tell them I want to help, with the playground. I can swing a hammer or paint a fence, whatever they need." Lucy smiled through her tears. "You'd make him proud." As she drove back toward Maple Hollow, the sky glowed orange with the setting sun. She felt lighter, freer, like a door had opened inside her heart. Damon's redemption had rippled farther than she'd ever imagined, touching Eli, touching her, touching everyone around them. When she reached home, Caleb ran out to meet her. "Mama, the men finished the swings," he shouted. She lifted him up, laughing. "Then tomorrow," she said, "we'll paint them bright blue." And as the last light faded from the sky, Lucy whispered, "Thank you, Damon, for giving all of us another chance." By the time the swings gleamed bright blue under the morning sun, the whole town was talking about Rogues Park. The bikers had worked every day, rain or shine, and Lucy could feel the town's walls beginning to crumble. Still, they needed money for the final touches. Slides, mulch, and benches. That's when Doc suggested a fundraiser. They decided on a community concert behind the church, open to everyone. "No tickets," Doc said. "Just donations. Let folks give what their hearts can." Lucy loved that idea. It felt humble, welcoming, like Damon would have wanted. The evening of the concert, the field buzzed with energy. String lights hung from poles, the smell of barbecue filled the air, and laughter carried across the grass. The Brotherhood riders stood at the edges, keeping watch but smiling easily, talking with townsfolk. Even Sheriff Rucker showed up, though he pretended it was for security. Lucy moved through the crowd, offering lemonade and hugs, her heart full. She couldn't believe this was the same town that had once whispered about her. Children ran barefoot across the grass, chasing each other between the folding chairs. For the first time, she felt like she truly belonged. When the local band began to play, Doc stepped up to the small stage. He took the microphone, his deep voice rolling through the crowd. "We came here because of a man named Rogue," he said, "but we stayed because of a woman who never stopped believing in grace." He gestured toward Lucy, and everyone clapped. Her cheeks burned, but her heart soared. "Everything you see here," Doc continued, "is what redemption looks like when a community gives it a chance." People cheered. The sound rose high into the night, louder than engines, stronger than fear. After the music, donations filled the jars, cash, checks, even hand-drawn IOUs from kids promising chores. Pastor Whitmore approached Lucy quietly, eyes soft. "You were right," he said. "Grace doesn't come wearing a suit. Sometimes it comes on 2 wheels." Lucy laughed, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Pastor." When the last song ended, the bikers gathered around the half-built playground under the stars. Lucy stood beside Doc, watching the children run and play. The lanterns flickered gently, casting golden light across the beams and boards. Doc turned to her, voice low. "He'd be proud of you, you know." Lucy's throat tightened. "I just followed what he started." Doc smiled. "That's what love does. It keeps the work going." As the crowd slowly dispersed, Lucy looked out over the glowing field, her heart full to bursting. What had started with fear had turned into hope. And standing there, with music fading and laughter echoing through the night, she knew something for certain. This wasn't just Damon's story anymore. It was hers too. The sound came first. A crack, sharp and wrong. Lucy woke to it, heart pounding, the room washed in moonlight. For a moment she thought it was thunder, but then she smelled it. Smoke. She threw off the blanket and ran to the window. Down the road where the playground stood, an orange glow licked the sky. Fire. She raced to Caleb's room, shaking him awake. "Stay here," she said, voice trembling. "Stay with Mrs. Carver. I'll be right back." By the time she reached the lot, her shoes were soaked from dew and her lungs burned from running. Flames danced over the half-built slide, wood cracking and collapsing. The sign they'd painted, Rogues Hope Park, was already blackened. Doc was there, shouting orders. "Grab buckets. Keep it from the church." The bikers formed a line from the creek, tossing water again and again. The sheriff's car pulled up, lights flashing, siren cutting through the night. Lucy joined the line, her nightgown clinging to her knees. Smoke stung her eyes. She could barely see, but she kept moving, passing buckets until her arms ached. "Come on," Doc shouted, his voice hoarse. "We can save the foundation." They fought for nearly an hour before the fire finally hissed out, leaving behind steaming ruins and a choking silence. The church bell rang once, lonely and low. Lucy sank to her knees in the mud, coughing. The sheriff stood near the ashes, jaw tight. "Someone did this on purpose," he said grimly. "Paint cans, accelerant. It wasn't an accident." Lucy's stomach turned cold. "Who would do that?" Doc's face hardened. "Someone who still can't see past a patch on a vest." Morning light found the park in ruins. Charred beams lay scattered like bones. Across what was left of the fence, someone had sprayed red letters. "No angels here." Tears blurred Lucy's vision. "We worked so hard," she whispered. Doc knelt beside her. "We'll build it again," he said. "But this time we won't build alone." She looked at him, confused. He smiled faintly. "They burned wood. They didn't burn the will behind it." That day, Lucy went door to door through Maple Hollow. She told her neighbors what had happened. She didn't beg. She simply said, "You saw what they tried to do for our children. Don't let hate win." By sundown, people began to come. Carpenters, parents, teens with shovels and paintbrushes. The bikers returned, humbled but not broken. Lucy stood at the center of the lot, the smell of smoke still thick in the air, and whispered a prayer. "Lord, turn this fire into light." And as dusk fell again, the first hammer struck wood. The rebuilding had begun. By the next morning, the ashes had cooled, but hope had not. Lucy arrived early, expecting silence. Instead, she found dozens of people already working. Men from town hauled wood. Teenagers carried paint cans. Mrs. Carver passed out muffins, barking orders like a drill sergeant. And right beside them, the bikers hammered, lifted, and laughed as if the fire had never happened. Doc caught Lucy's stunned look. "Told you," he said, smiling. "We don't rebuild alone." The air buzzed with determination. Every strike of a hammer felt like a heartbeat. Even the sheriff came, rolling up his sleeves to help pour concrete. When someone muttered about the graffiti, Lucy climbed onto a plank and shouted, "They said no angels here, so let's prove them wrong. Let's fill this place with angels who build." Cheers rose, strong and loud. By sunset, new beams stood tall. The smell of fresh-cut wood replaced the smoke. Lucy stood beside Doc, her heart swelling. "They tried to burn it down," she said softly, "but they only lit something stronger." He nodded. "That's how grace works. It doesn't die easy." As the last rays of sunlight touched the new swing set, Lucy felt it. Peace, deep and certain. The fire hadn't destroyed Damon's dream. It had purified it. And in that moment, Maple Hollow wasn't divided anymore. It was one town, one heartbeat, rebuilding together. A week later, the park stood finished. Bright colors shone where ash once lay, and laughter filled the air. Lucy sat on a bench beside Doc, watching Caleb race across the new slide. The wind carried children's joy like music. In her hands, she held Damon's letter, creased, worn, but whole. She whispered the words again. "Tell her I changed. Tell her she saved me." Doc noticed her tears and said softly, "Looks like he kept his promise." Lucy smiled through them. "No," she said. "We did." The church bells rang noon, their sound drifting over the park. Parents waved, kids shouted, and for the first time, Lucy didn't feel haunted by her past. She felt blessed by it. She folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket. No longer a wound, but a promise fulfilled. The night before the park's dedication, Maple Hollow gathered beneath the stars. Lanterns glowed along the fence line, and the candles the bikers once placed flickered again. Lucy stood at the center with Caleb beside her, his small hand clutching hers. Doc stepped forward, voice steady. "Tonight we remember the man who showed us that redemption isn't about where you start. It's about what you build before the end." Heads bowed, and silence washed over the crowd. The wind carried the scent of cut grass and wax. Lucy lifted her face, eyes glistening. "Thank you, Damon," she whispered. "You brought us home." When the prayers ended, no one rushed to leave. They stayed, holding candles high, their flames merging into a single golden glow. For the first time, the town wasn't divided by fear or name. It was united in grace. Easter morning rose bright and golden, washing Maple Hollow in a soft glow that felt like grace itself. Birds sang from the budding trees, and the smell of lilacs drifted through the crisp air. Lucy Monroe stood at the edge of the brand new playground, her breath catching as she looked out over what they had built together. The wooden beams gleamed, the slides sparkled, and the swings creaked gently in the breeze. A freshly carved sign stood at the entrance, the letters deep and proud. Rogues Hope Park, dedicated to second chances. People filled the field in their Sunday best. Families, neighbors, and even strangers who had once doubted. Children ran barefoot in the grass, clutching colorful balloons. The Brotherhood Riders for Christ stood nearby, lined up beside their polished motorcycles, heads bowed respectfully as church bells began to ring. Pastor Whitmore stepped forward, his voice steady but warm. "We stand today on ground once covered in ashes," he said. "But God has a way of turning ashes into beauty. This park isn't just a playground. It's a promise that redemption is real." Lucy blinked back tears as Caleb handed her the scissors. Doc stood beside them, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Together they cut the ribbon, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Children swarmed the playground, laughter echoing through the air like music. Doc turned to Lucy and said quietly, "He'd be proud, you know." Lucy smiled through her tears. "He already is. I can feel him here." For a long moment she just watched, the children playing, the townsfolk smiling, the bikers laughing softly among themselves. Even the sheriff stood nearby, nodding in quiet approval. When the bikers finally started their engines, the sound rolled through the hills like thunder softened by mercy. Lucy waved as they rode away, her heart swelling with gratitude. She looked up toward the sky, whispering, "Thank you, Lord, for second chances, and for love that outlives fear." And as the wind brushed her cheek, she could almost hear Damon's voice, low and sure. "You did good, Lucy. You did real good." Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.